Hey guys.
Okay, so we've got a very special guest with us today. Her name is Elle Roberts.
Yes.
And before Elle tells you about what she does, because she's got like a whole heap of stuff going on, let's talk about how we met Elle.
Yeah, well, Elle was our first real business coach.
Yes! Real life business coach.
I know.
We just couldn't believe that we got to work with you.
I know. So excited. We're like, no, let's not commit while we're talking. Like, let's make sure we talk after. And then we're just like, oh my God, yes, let's do it.
Now, Elle, you actually helped us probably about 12 months ago now or more. I think you were still
maybe
pregnant with the
18-ish.
twins back then.
Yeah.
Elle was responsible for really helping us through some very early stage systemization of a few things in our business and some tech stuff and just any question that we had. And another adopted big sister in business, which is
great
really
for accountability. I think it's really important to have somebody that's ahead of you, is there to make you, think about what you need to get done and make sure you get it done. And or at least promise you'll get it done next time.
You have so much going on. We like the twins is like one whole thing, but last 12 months. But you've also got a lot going on in your business. So do you want to tell everyone about really, maybe like a holistic look at your life at the moment and where you're at with different
Yeah. Sure. I will condense it because there is a lot. I like to be busy. I like to have several balls in the air at the time. That's what keeps me motivated. It keeps my brain engaged. I think I'm a little bit addicted to stress and anxiety, but I've also got an older boy. The twins turn 1 this month. So it's been 12 months of life with 3 kids, and that's looked very, very different than what I thought it would look like. But I also have 3 businesses. So I have 3 children and 3 businesses. And basically...
We're onto the legacy question already.
Basically, my Elle Roberts business is where it all started, and that's where I do business coaching. I work with creative entrepreneurs, particularly passion-driven women like yourself who, are in the world to create a mission and to achieve something rather than just make money. And I help them, as you said, with marketing, systems, online presence, profiling. A lot of what I do helps women really understand who they are and what they need to be putting forward in the world, that personal branding side of things. And I love that. And the way I deliver that's changed over the last 12 months, thanks to babies. I've got a lot less face-to-face time, so I'm not doing a lot of one-on-one coaching anymore. I'm doing more behind-the-scenes stuff, website management, tech stuff to help people feel confident about their online presence and those sorts of things. After that, sorry?
Is that stuff that you can do at like
11 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
Yeah, that's it. I'm not committed to show up at particular times. I'm not committed to have makeup and mascara on and my hair washed or brushed or those sorts of things. So that's what's working for me and my family at the moment. And I'm excited to get back into business coaching in the future once they are older and more, time manageable. But for now, the behind the scenes stuff is actually just as fulfilling because it's having the same effect, it's having the same results for them, but I'm delivering it in a really different way. Yes. So from that grew Artful Business Community. I created an event 6 years ago that was just a 2-day business conference, and it was designed for that small, creative, passionate business owner. At the time myself, I've done business strategy, marketing, all of the stuff at uni. That's what I studied. But then when I got into business for myself, I still struggled with how connected it is to self and how, like, if my self-worth was shit, then my marketing would follow. Yes. So I looked for that solution and I didn't find it. So that's where Artful Business Conference came from. And over the years, it became really clear that it was more than just a 2-day event. It was actually a movement and a community of people. So we've changed and reiterated. So we really nurture that community right year round. And the conference is just a cornerstone element of that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then this year in January, I launched a brand new thing. Again, it's come from my own journey and from things that I've experienced. And that's really around, it's called The Worth Seekers, and it's a website or a platform really focused on women and money, and not just entrepreneurs, but women in general. I think it will appeal mostly to those of an entrepreneurial mindset, but we've got a lot to offer women that are chasing the more traditional career path as well. There's lots of glass ceiling stuff that they still have to deal with, and we're talking about that there. And that's because when I stopped working 18 months, nearly 2 years ago, because I got sick really quickly when I got pregnant, we weren't financially set up for that. We went, you know, put through the ringer basically, and we're still struggling our way out of that 2 years later, because my business was making between $6,000 and $10,000 a month, and we were living accordingly. And then almost overnight it was making nothing, and 2 years later it's just started to generate an income again, because I've just started to be able to have the time to put into it. And we thought we were doing all the right things, but you don't know what you don't know. And despite being well educated and, you know, a university degree and a business management background, my personal finance knowledge was little to none. And there's so many things that are so easy to achieve, but you don't know what you don't know. So the Worth Seekers is all about helping people access that information, but also helping people start the conversation. It just shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be hard. And it's not hard. It's just really taboo, and it can be quite shameful, particularly when you're in a bad way. So yeah, I just want to create a space where women can really feel like they can come and ask the dumb questions, because there aren't any dumb questions, and also just share their experiences and what they've learned and what's helped them and their families.
Yeah, and I've noticed that there's been a real trend in the last 12 months towards women particularly empowering themselves by knowing their numbers and being extremely aware of where the money's going. And as you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be for a business purpose. Like, I know for us, really getting down and dirty and actually hooking our personal finances up to zero, it was a game changer. Like, okay, we've got some significant goals and ways that we can actually adapt our budget now. Like, we can actually look at how we're doing things.
Where you can cut it back and where you can spend a bit more.
Particularly good when you've got some kind of random chunks of money that come in if you've got a business or... That's
it, and managing that. And, you know, even like, I feel like in hindsight, I feel like I've sort of failed a lot of my clients along the way, because we look at profitability, we look at sustainability and building that in your business. But I think in the 8 years working as a business coach, I've had the conversation about superannuation a handful of times, if that. And, you know, so it's not, even the people that are making their business work aren't necessarily looking after themselves and their family for the long term. And that's certainly what I was guilty of when I got sick. It was like, well, 1 month later and we're in trouble now because the money's not coming where it used to come from.
And it is education. And if we can preempt a situation happening where it matters, then you can actually, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, like, if you can help people to, you know, trigger to look at it, then deal with it, then if something happens, they're going to be in a much better position.
Absolutely.
So I've got a question. Now, obviously the Worth Seekers has come about, you've come into that particular business for the reasons that you've just talked about. But if we go back to 8 years ago or 10 years ago, what was happening for you that made you go, you know what, being an employee isn't necessarily my preference. I would like to work for myself. Like, what happened for you back then?
It changed in a day. It turned on its head in a day. I was very driven. I went to uni, as I said, did business management, marketing. I did a double degree so that I could also study tourism and international business. I wanted to be the Richard Branson of my generation. I wanted to be a hotel mogul. I wanted to travel the world and wear makeup and fancy shoes every day. Anyone who's known me over the last 7 or so years will just not believe any of that, but that's who I was. I was that girl. I wanted to be an it girl, and I wanted to be self-made, and I wanted to have this really high-flying career and a really overflowing bank account. And then at 23, I had a baby, and I had a baby in a pretty unpleasant relationship. So I ended up a single mom. I actually ended up single while I was still pregnant. So I had him. And even when I know parenthood, motherhood is a catalyst for a lot of people for starting businesses. Even when I had Aston, I was determined that, you know, my life would still be as I had planned, and this baby would just have to come along for the ride with me. I went back to work when he was a week old, and he came with me for the first 3 months. And then after 3 months, he went to daycare. And I was just really, part of that was necessity. I was a single mum and I needed the money to be coming in. But also it was because I was really driven to still fulfill my dreams. And it was probably when he was between 6 and 8 months, I can't remember exactly, that I just had a moment. I was sitting on the floor playing with him, and I don't want to get ready for work today. I don't want to go. And it's not because I can't, because I have been. It's just because I don't want to. Like, I don't want to miss out on this. I don't want to be away from him. There's got to be something else. How can I do this differently? And I was on a single parent pension at the time, or once I decided not to go back to work, I then got on a single parent pension, and that made, life much, much easier for me. And there's certainly some guilt around that and some shame around that. And I want to sort of encourage women through the Worth Seekers to be empowered, but also not to feel awful about situations where you do end up getting support and help. So that meant that he didn't have to go to daycare 5 days a week at 6 months old. It meant that I could spend time with him. But the expenses that I had at the time, I was sort of falling about $80 short every week. And, we did everything we could to cut those expenses and really knuckle down sort of thing. But still, it just seemed to be falling short, that $80. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but when it's not there, it's a huge amount. And as if it was, it was snowballing every week. So at the same time, I was nesting and got all creative, and all these Mother Earth things were happening to me, and I got into sewing and making. And so I just started selling things that I was making to friends and family. And that sort of filled the gap. That gave me $80. I've talked many times over the years about how, in hindsight, it sort of looks like that business was a bit of a failure. But in actual fact, it was probably the most successful business I ever had, because all I needed it to do was pay me $80 a week, and it consistently did that over the next 2 years. So I was able to stay home and be a full-time mum and just sort of run this side hustle business on the side to pay the bills.
I didn't know this story, Elle.
That's such a great story, because it's exactly what we want to talk about and get across to everybody, that everybody's in a completely different state and stage in their business.
Yeah.
And some of them, are much further along, and their expenses are higher and their income's higher, and they're stepping to the next level. That's, yes, it still has the same or the same sorts of struggles, or struggles equivalent to other ones. They don't go away when you get higher level.
Yeah.
But even if what you're looking at doing, and I don't even want to say even if, but if what you're looking at doing is avoiding going back to a full day or 2 full days or whatever it is, and you want to bridge that gap, if you can start with that, it's a success.
Absolutely. And it was so powerful. Like, that business was not only successful in its own right, but it was life-changing. That's what set me on the path that I'm now on. And it's very different than the, lots of plane flights all over the world and the hotel stays and high heels and things. But I look at that now and I just think, I don't want any of that. Like, it doesn't appeal to me at all. So
okay, so obviously success back then was the heels and the makeup and the traveling, and then success became just making ends meet so that Aston had nappies and you could eat. So that's huge, right? If you fast forward to now, with everything that you know, what does success look and feel like to you now in your business?
Definitely financial freedom. And as I said, we're still, as a family, really quite struggling to achieve that. It's a work in progress for us personally, because of what's happened over the last couple of years. But we're on the right path and we're making steps towards that. So financial freedom, definitely. And I don't need to be crazy wealthy. We've done a lot of work around what our ideal lifestyle looks like and what that costs. So we've got a pretty clear figure on what financial freedom looks like for us in terms of income and assets and all that sort of stuff. So we're working towards that. But then I don't want to necessarily win lotto either, because I don't need to be free of work either, because having a work-life balance for me is definitely important. And the biggest thing that I've struggled with over the last 12 months is not really having control over that. with newborn babies and 2 of them, it's been, you know, really challenging to just focus on them and to give them everything that I've got. And now over the last couple of months, coming back and creating space for myself and my business has been so mentally fulfilling, that, you know, definitely creating a work-life balance that works for us. And for me personally, that means time to work, because that's what I want to do. My brain, my heart really want to do more of that. So, but finding a balance that feels easy and effortless is important.
You go.
I was just going to say, I know that, you know, when you look at a lot of successful business people out there, whether it's the Richard Bransons or whatever, a lot of them have had businesses where, well, they've either done them and failed, or they've done them and they haven't been able to continue them, and they've sort of either sold them or they've pivoted onto other businesses. You know, you reached a point, you know, pre-pregnancy, I guess, more so than just them being born, where you had a great successful business, and now we know that you're now going to be able to bring that back up again. But going through having the twins, you know, I would say that is probably a, you know, life-changing moment for you when you look back and say, you know, something really changed the trajectory of where you're going and what you're doing. But it's really exciting to hear and see the passion and drive behind, you know, what's going to come out of that. And knowing that there are so many mums out there that don't have 2, they have 1, or they have multiple, but at different ages. Tell us about the challenge and what you had to do, even from a pivot and mindset perspective, going from being, you know, really successful in your own right, being really proud, I'm sure, of what you built up, to then having to pivot.
Yeah, it's quite honestly been the hardest 12 months of my life. And, you know, that's pretty big, because there's been some ugly years before then, and, you know, unpleasant relationships, and being a single mum for 4 years, and there's been some dark days, but this was definitely the hardest 12 months of my life. And I think because it came about so suddenly, I was fine. And as you said, I was on a very clear path, and I had a very, you know, business and life worked, and we had money for the first time in a really long time, and things felt really good. And then almost overnight, I got so sick that and not only did I have to close my business down, my business shut down overnight. So I let people down, and, you know, I've worked really hard to make up for that and to go back and fix those things. But just emotionally, that was really hard. I let clients down, and I had to, you know, let clients off my books basically overnight, without doing the work that I promised. I had to refund a lot of money, and that, you know, wasn't really there to refund because it had already been spent. So those sort of, it was very challenging. And then, as I said, mentally and emotionally, I love what I do. And so even as we sort of got past the trauma of how quickly it all happened, I didn't get back to myself for such a long time. You know, with Aston, it was very different. As I said, I went back to work in an office job. I was office manager, and I went back to work when he was a week old, and life just seemed to flow on. And it wasn't until I made decisions for myself and for him that things changed. Whereas with the twins, it just, you know, they were in hospital for 2 weeks, and then it just was full on from day one. It just was no sleep, and I hated breastfeeding, and I'd really enjoyed it the first time round, and everything felt like a struggle, and everything felt hard. I was, of course, in love with them, but it took me quite a while to enjoy time with them. I was quite resentful and desperate for them to leave me alone so that I could go back to work and get on with the thing. And I think too, the difference was with Aston, you know, that I think Aston set me on this new path, as I said, changed my ideals overnight, but I'm on the same path now. The twins didn't have that effect on me, except they felt like they were getting in the way of achieving what I now know that I want to achieve, which is silly, because I want to achieve it as much for them as I do for myself. But just all those messy emotions and the hormones and the exhaustion, It was a real mental challenge.
And exhaustion, you know, I sat in the GP office once talking to this woman about the fact that tiredness really actually masks itself as anxiety and depression in a lot of mothers, where we're so exhausted that you actually start wondering, can I go on? Can I actually, like, is it actually possible to do this for another hour, let alone another 20 years? That's how it feels at the time.
I don't mean to get too heavy, but there were times in the last 12 months where I had borderline suicidal thoughts, and they weren't like, I just need to end it all. They weren't like epic drama, depression. It was just like, I want it all to stop. I'm really tired. And that seems like it will be quiet at least. Like it was, and I think you're right. I think it is such a, you know, it just messes with the chemicals in your brain so much, that lack of sleep, and it really changes your ability to deal with day-to-day situations. You know, if I got a red light, I would burst into tears, and I'm not even that. I'm not in a rush to get anywhere. It just, I can't cope with anything else being thrown at me right now, and you're just really tired.
Now I'm going to go a little bit onto the soul talk here for a minute. And I know that you're open to this, Elle. I honestly believe that our children and the people that come into our lives are the people that are here to help us learn, right? So isn't it interesting that Aston has come into your life at a time where you have literally gone onto the trajectory of where you are now? And I wouldn't say you were ever like a massive hustler, but you did have a lot on your plate. Like the Artful Business Conference is huge. Like you're bringing together a huge, amazing community of women predominantly that, you know, it was every year, wasn't it?
Speakers and sponsors, and like, you know, it's a big event to put on.
And I know you were tired, and openly talked about that. And I also know that, you know, you had a lot of balls in the air, I guess. So isn't it funny how the twins come along right at the time where you were at your peak, and it forces you to really slow down? So it's like that contrast.
Good old track to the face.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And it was busy. And I say my business stopped overnight, and that's because I was doing 20 plus hours of face-to-face coaching time every week.
Yeah. And that's a lot. That's like a full-time job for some people, or at least a four-day a week kind of job for people.
Yeah. And on top of that, I was doing marketing and organizing the conference and all the other things that you just need, you know, paying the bills and receiving your money, all the things that you need to do to run a business. That was just the face-to-face hours. And then, you know, I got so sick that I just suddenly couldn't do any face-to-face hours, and I was in bed for 3 months. And then, so it was a hard lesson to learn, but I definitely learned a lot about myself and a lot about my family and what I actually really want for my family going forward.
Let's talk about that. What do you want? Like, let's look at ideal week. Maybe we'll go a year or two. You know, obviously you're still adjusting to things, and they're getting a bit older and a little bit easier. I always say they get easier and harder at the same time as kids get older.
Definitely.
Things that it's just different challenges. But can you give us an idea on what your ideal week will look like, you know, a year or two from now?
Yeah, I definitely, and then we're moving towards that hopefully in the next few months. We've just got a second nanny to help out so that I get a few more days in the office. I joked when Aston started school, a few of my friends really looked at homeschooling and that sort of thing. And education is so important to me, and I love learning and I love teaching. Teaching's a big part of what I do in all of my businesses. And so I toyed with the idea for a week or two, you know, maybe I'd be really kick-ass at homeschooling. And I'm really had to be honest with myself, and I'm a better mum when he spends 6 hours a day at school.
Yeah.
I am more present with him. I am, you know, more patient with him. We have more fun together because we have time apart and because I get to work on my projects and the things that matter to me. And that's how I feel about the twins at the moment is, you know, the last 12 months, even though we've had some help, it's been very little amounts and it's been, you know, short in time. I, you know, feel like they're at an age now where I can have some of that time back for myself. And that means then that I will be more present and more accepting and enjoying the time that we do spend together. So ideally we're moving towards 4 days a week where I get time to myself from 8 till 2. So they're not long days, but they feel like so long compared to
compared to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So 4 days, 8 till 2, where I'm in the office and focusing on the things that matter to me and my business and bringing in money again. It is important to me personally that I'm providing and contributing to the family finances as well. And that just feels good. So yeah, it's definitely about then still having lots of time to cook dinners and play outside and paint with the kids and spend the weekends at the beach. And
it's such a great example or description of the whole blend thing when we talk about being fulfilled ourselves in what we're doing, because I think that's what we all want. We all want to be able to feel like we're useful outside of just being a mother.
Yeah.
Because we know we can be useful at that, but we want to be even more useful. And like you say, by Aston going to school, you're even better at being a mum.
Yeah.
And so
it's
I
the
think
same as everything. Like if you're running your business literally 24 hours a day, you're going to start feeling resentful of your clients.
And business, that's right.
It's the same. Like I agree. It's funny you should say 8 until 2. We've got the kids are at school from 9 until 3, but really effectively between 10 and 2:30, we've committed to being together for 4 days a week. And it was amazing to be able to actually spend some focused time on the business.
Yeah.
And know that when you're off, you're off.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting more time. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting more time off. And it's like we talked about with other people, the more you schedule, the more freedom you have.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone yesterday. I really fought scheduling for a long time in any kind of form, any kind of containers in my work life, because I'm a creative and I like to be creative and I'm a problem solver and
spontaneous.
That's it. And as I said, I think I'm a little bit addicted to stress and anxiety. So there's this level of like rush that I like to have. I work well to deadlines, all those sorts of things. But the twins, the other thing that they really have taught me is that the more structure, the more containers, the less decisions I have, like stupid decisions. If I take them out of my day, actually the better I am at, actually doing the content that I said I was going to do, or, doing that next step in my business that's actually going to move me forward rather than faffing around making silly decisions.
Well, there's a reason why Steve Jobs wore the same thing every day, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's one thing that you don't have to think about.
Yeah.
I chucked half my wardrobe out and it's been the best thing ever. I just wear this dress all the time.
I couldn't imagine if the kids didn't have to wear a school uniform.
Yeah.
Especially when you start looking at girls in high school, like, my goodness.
No. Well, I just think the time and the energy that goes into that sort of thing that, school uniforms do cut out. And I kind of have the same theory in my day. Like I wear stripes or I wear a denim shirt. Love
it.
So it doesn't matter what I pick up.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to something that you were talking about before, because I actually really liked what you said. And you said it in passing, but it's actually really important, I think, for people to know, especially if they're going to work with you as well. You have actually put together a life plan with your partner, and you have talked about what that looks like for you and worked out as a family what needs to happen to get to that position that you want to be in. And to a certain extent, I'm assuming it's not like I'm going to work out exactly how that's going to happen, but it's looking at the outcome that you want and working out what's required realistically. And then kind of, do you do the whole, then I just let it go and know that it's going to happen? Or do you actually put plans into place to make it happen? Just frozen.
I'd be as you in just setting your intention and putting it out in the world and telling, deciding what you want. I think the biggest reason why we don't achieve what we want is because we haven't defined it.
Yeah.
I want to be rich, or I want to have a work-life balance. But what does that actually look like? Like my version of rich is probably different to yours. And, I did talk when Mark and I first got together about how my version of all of that had to change, because what I wanted as a single mum for me and Aston suddenly became very different, because there was this other person and we wanted different things than I had wanted on my own. And again, now with 3 kids, it looks different. one of the things that we've talked about is whether we have more kids or not. And to be really honest with you, it's really not on the table unless in the next 2 or 3 years I can get my business to a point where Mark can take time off work and he can be the stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do that again. I don't want to start again from the beginning with a newborn and have to sort of give up 12 months of my life. And, you know, some mums love that part of the process and that's really exciting to them. And for me, you know, the last 12 months have been really hard, and I'm excited now. I love this age and as they get older now, but I don't want to start at the beginning again unless that can be Mark's primary role and I can keep working basically. So that was a really hard conversation to have, to sort of tell your partner, I didn't really like hanging out with our kids for the last 12 months. Like, it feels really awful. And I did definitely enjoy the day to day, but I just wanted to be really honest about, you know, I don't want to do it again if I don't have to.
Well, I think that's a great point to bring up anyway, because a lot of mums or families do have to have that conversation, and whether people have their own business or whether they're, you know, they are a career person.
Absolutely.
That's what determines often whether you're going to have another child and how it will look, and making sure that both people are on the same page as to what that has to look like for you to both be happy for it to happen.
Yeah. And like you said, with the financial side of things, you know, we really broke down our ideal life in terms of where we would like to buy a house and what sort of house we would like to buy. And one of the ways we had that conversation was, if we won $22 million tomorrow, how would we spend it? What would we do? And, you know, there would be a bit of travel in there because I'd love to see certain parts of the world, but I wouldn't go on a 2-year world trip because Mark would hate that with every ounce of his being. And, you know, we wouldn't buy a lavish 37-bedroom house just because we could. We have very clear ideas around what our ideal house looks like. So then we know, you know, realistically speaking, we know what the benchmark income is for our family to be wealthy and rich and financially free. And it's a lot smaller than I thought it would have been.
We've often... you know, we'll go to bed and we'll do a similar sort of thing. Randall might go, oh, the lotto is whatever. Imagine what would we do if we won that? And it is amazing what happens when you look at more than enough money, basically.
Yeah.
And then you pair it back to, well, what do you really want? And I think you're right. I think it's often quite different to what you expect, and takes a lot less than you expect to certainly have enough, and to then be able to have a really happy, blessed life to do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
Now, talking about a happy, blessed life, when you think about yourself when you're like a bazillion years old in your rocking chair, the twins have got their own children, you know, your life is kind of towards the end of your time here. What do you look back on, and like, what do you want your legacy to be? Like, what do you want people to remember you for?
I've just been listening to a couple of podcasts lately all about death, and like interviews with palliative care nurses and things. And, you know, one of the things that she mentioned was no one talks about money or accolades even. They all talk about relationships. And if they talk about their career, they talk about experiences and people that they, you know, that touch them along the journey of their career. So I definitely think that, you know, relationships are a huge part of what matters to me in life and in business. My business, all of them are generated around the idea of community and helping each other up, and let's do it together so that it feels less scary sort of thing. And life is the same. You know, I'm really passionate about my family and my friends and spending time with the people that matter to me. So I hope if my 3 children are good, loving, kind people, that's important to me. If they're happy and fulfilled, I don't care what they do when they grow old, but as long as they enjoy what they do. But also, you know, I hope that I touch some lives. It is important to me to do something meaningful with my work. So, you know, the Artful Business Conference, for example, is an opportunity for me to help 150 women over a weekend feel good about themselves and good about their business. And that matters to me, you know, almost on a selfish level. Like, it matters to me to be of service. So if I can, you know, say that I've spent most of my career being of service, then that'll feel pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just comes down, honestly, for so many people, I think success and legacy and life comes down to community, comes down to relationships, it comes down to purpose. Like there's just been a common theme.
And belonging, like feeling like you belong.
Yeah.
You know, that you have a place that people are happy to see you and you're happy to see them.
Yeah. And I want to have lived a brave life. I think, you know, I don't want to be scared of things that I don't understand or I don't know. And, you know, we were talking a bit about the work-life balance and families and motherhood and decisions that you have to make around all of that. And there's one quote that my dad told me when I first had Aston, and it's been sort of like my mantra for life going forward. And it's just simply, my father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and he let me watch.
Just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. And for me, whenever I get that mummy guilt around, I shouldn't be in the office again, I should be playing with the kids, I just think, well, I can't tell them to pursue their dreams and do what fulfills them and what they want to achieve in the world if I'm not showing them that I did it too. And some days that means you have to make a hard decision. And you know, I've designed my business so that I don't have to be in the office all the time. I do want time with the kids and I do want that to be, you know, meaningful time. But I want them also to know that, you know, Aston knows about how important the Artful Business Conference is to me. And he knows that there'll be less time with me in the lead up to that. But once it's over, then I'll make a bigger effort to spend more time with him. And he's okay with that because he sees me talk about how much it matters. He hears me talk with Mum and Mark about, you know, the impact that has on people's lives. And I want to model that for them. I don't want them to feel like they have to go to a job every day and make money just so they can have a house that they don't care about and cars that, you know, no one's really impressed by. I want them to live a brave life. So I want to model that for them.
Yeah, I think we have such a responsibility to our children to teach them through doing and living. I mean, whether we like it or not, that is what we're doing. So we better do a good job at living it, you know. So I had a great conversation with a dad at school the other day when I went in to cook pancakes for Shrove Tuesday. And he was talking about how when he grew up, they didn't have the best house, but they actually did a lot of traveling, a lot of experiences. By his son's, you know, his oldest is 7. By the time he was 7, he'd been to Africa, he'd been here and been there. And he remembers distinctly saying to his mum one day, you know, all of my friends have nicer houses than us and nicer cars than us. And it kind of got me thinking, you know, and she said, well, okay, well, we do all of these things. And so that's why that we don't necessarily invest it so much in the house, but we have all these experiences. Would you prefer that or the other?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh no, I would definitely prefer the experiences. And so he's a pilot with Qantas, which is quite handy, but it means that for him, it's really important to him to give experiences to his kids as well for the same sort of reason, because he remembers it so fondly, and he doesn't remember that the house had a crack or that he doesn't think about those things, but he thinks about all of the times with his brothers and his sisters and when they went here and went there, and he remembers them so vividly. I was like so inspired kind of talking to him, because I think not enough people even think about that reflection that we have on the kids today. So
and it doesn't have to be about stuff that costs money either. I mean, my biggest thing about, you know, my childhood is that we had dinner together every night. And I hated it at the time. Like, I loved when I got to go and stay at my friend's house and we'd eat in front of the TV and they'd all just do their thing, and then we could go off to our bedroom and hang out like girls want to, and I just sit at the table and you had to tell them about your day, and you know, and I hated it. But, you know, in hindsight, looking back, that was, you know, our quality time. That was when Mum and Dad were saying to us, we're here for you and we want to know what you're doing and we're interested in what matters to you. And so it's important for me to, you know, do that for my kids. And I can see it already. Aston's nearly 9 and he often is like, can't we just watch a movie and eat dinner? You know, sometimes it's, yeah, sure we can, but most of the time it's, no, you can watch a movie after dinner, but right now we're sitting together and you're telling me about your day, and that's, you know, you can grumble all you like. I know you'll thank me for it later.
Now, we know that you've got a 4-week course that you have as a gift for the guys that are actually watching this, don't you? So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's not my program at all. It's a gift that I'm giving on behalf of, they're a company called Wealth Enhancers, and they're actually the team that Mark and I are working with as our financial planners. They're financial planners focused on Gen Y and really getting younger people interested and proactive about money, so that we don't wait till we're in our late 40s to go, oh shit, I really should sort this out before I retire. And, you know, as I said, the last 12 months have been stressful financially, and we've had lots of really hard decisions to make. And we've had lots of easy decisions that we've chosen not to make because of the lifestyle choices that we want to make for ourselves and things. So, and they're really flexible. They're really values driven. And so they're a powerful team to work with when it comes to money, because it's not about money in the end. It's about the lifestyle that you can provide for yourself and for your family. So their program's just a 4-week free sort your shit out a little bit around money and start to look at it and start to ask some questions and get interested in your own personal finances.
So we know that you guys can access that on the page now, or you can actually expect to hear from Elle via email. She's actually going to send that out to you as well in about a week probably. So for everyone who has been watching today, we just wanted to say thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it.
We did. And thanks, Elle, for sharing with us, you know, the tough times, but also the reality of what business and the journey really looks like.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to talk to you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.